I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please. Here.
Randall.
Here.
Wakefield.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Rivera.
Here.
Sarah.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News and Courier News, filed with municipal clerk and posted on the municipal bulletin board on December 15th, 2022. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the September 25th, 2023 meeting of the Bernardsville Borough Council. This meeting is being conducted in person in the council chambers in Borough Hall, and it is being broadcast live on YouTube and on Zoom to make it as convenient as possible for residents to attend the meeting. Members of the public who are here in person and those attending remotely on Zoom will be given the opportunity to comment at appropriate times during the meeting in accordance with the following guidelines. Members of the public will be allowed to speak during the open session and during formal public hearings on the agenda, including public hearings on ordinances. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, which will be monitored and enforced by the borough clerk. Comments containing offensive, profane, or indecent language or language constituting hate speech will not be permitted. Remote participants will be muted unless they are unmuted by the clerk, and remote participants will not be able to unmute themselves. The clerk will mute remote speakers at the expiration of their 3 minutes of allotted time, or if they make any inappropriate or offensive comments. All speakers, whether in person or on Zoom, shall state their names and addresses before making their comments. Speakers on Zoom shall activate their cameras so that they can be seen by members of the governing body and the audience. Failure of the governing body to provide a live broadcast of this meeting or technological problems encountered during the course of the meeting that affect remote viewing and or participation will not invalidate this meeting or any action taken, including but not limited to the adoption of any ordinance, resolution, or motion. All right, repeat that back to me. So welcome to our meeting. And just, I know we realized too late that this was the end of Yom Kippur. It started yesterday, so I am apologizing for having a meeting the evening of Yom Kippur. And Anthony is going to make that adjustment for our calendar for next year. So thank you for those that brought it to our attention. So moving on, I have a proclamation. We have another, you guys have been striking out Eagle Scouts like crazy. We've had, this is my second proclamation. You're probably up next, Evan, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so whereas R.J. Bobnowski has proven himself to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America, and specifically Boy Scout Troop 150, and has achieved the highest rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas it takes years of dedication and commitment to achieve Eagle rank, and whereas Eagle Scouts act as leaders and role models in the community, and whereas the Eagle Scout Award is a distinction that will follow him throughout life and will be a beacon to others of the leadership quality and commitment this young man has shown. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the mayor and council of the Borough of Bernardsville do hereby congratulate and recognize R.J. Bobnowski for his achievement of the rank of Eagle Scout. We are proud to have him as a member of our community. And I will give this to him in a nice folder at the actual Eagle Court of Honor, which is in October. All right, we also have, I'm not going to read this one because it's very long, to knock out opioid abuse. But we have done this every year, and it's really been an important thing. And I see Tony is here from Community in Crisis. So an important thing to remember, we had a nice ceremony for Overdose Awareness Day, which then kicked off opioid awareness. And if you ever need more information, want to get involved, Community in Crisis is right here in our town. They'd love to talk to you. So thank you for that. And now I'm going to change the agenda a little bit. And Jeff Hammond, you want to do your piece? Yes.
Which one of the three things am I? The greeting?
Oh, you got two things? Wait.
Actually, several.
Oh, okay. Yeah, oh, yeah, we do have two.
Okay,
Whichever one you want to do.
first, sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm here representing the green team, Jeff Hammond, 18th Lot Court. Here representing the green team and by extension, the Environmental Commission. As I think you're probably aware, we have to get recertified by Sustainable Jersey every 3 years. Our last certification lapsed in December 2023, in part due to the disruption of the pandemic. We were granted an extension by Sustainable Jersey until July to get everything in order. Our goal ultimately, when I say I mean, that was the green team in general, but also, I hope he's here, my co-leader, Greg DeGrandpre.
Yeah.
We really wanted to shoot for silver. So just as a way of background, there's 564, or is it 567? I'm not sure how many municipalities this week are in New Jersey, but of the 564, only 204 are certified. And of the 21 municipalities in Somerset County, only 11, I think, if memory serves me, don't print that yet until I fact check that, but only 11 were certified by Sustainable Jersey. So our goal was to get our bronze certification back and actually shoot for silver, which was a heavy lift. We knew that was going to be probably not sustainable this year, but it's really on target for next year. Make a long story short, and you have the handout I gave you. The requirements are you have to have 150 points that you collect over a number of 6 categories, I think it is. We really shot way past that. We got 300 points, we had double the amount we needed. Let's see, we've got 10 categories for the priority requirements, et cetera, et cetera. We're very close to silver. We almost made it. This actually is a feather in our cap, not just the green team, because we didn't do all the work. We collated a lot of the material, but a lot of other agencies, the Mayor's Wellness Committee was a big part of this as well. The Rec Committee, downtown Bernardsville, now Main Street Bernardsville. A lot of different hands that went into this, so it was a collective win. But I just wanted to make the borough aware of where we are. So we're going to get our bronze back. They're going to award that to us at the League of Municipalities meeting in November, and then our next application deadline will be in February for the first of 3 tiers of applications. And we're going to be shooting for silver. Some of the things will be an easy, low-hanging fruit. For example, the deer management plan, which lapsed. We're already going to get that back in place. Some things will be a little bit of a harder lift. There are a lot of issues related to shade tree. In order to get any of the points for things we're doing, like the tree hazard inventory, we need to have what's called the New Jersey Urban and Regional Forestry Plan. But for that, we need to have input from an arborist or a forester. And there's another predicate plan that you have to do. That one's going to be a little bit of a heavier lift, but we need a dedicated shade tree committee to do that. And there's a whole lot of other categories. Greg and I have mapped out. He actually created a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, which was the road, the pathway to silver, he called it. So we have at least 13 more projects that we're going to put into place, including working with some of the students who are on the environmental committee, working on a food waste reduction program in the schools. So there's a lot of things we're going to have in the works. And if anybody has any questions about what it took to get some of these categories, or what it will take to get some of the categories, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
No, it's
Can I get
great
another 3
work.
minutes?
Thank you so much. Now, this does, we don't have to do 3 minutes here, because this is a presentation. So that's why we put you
So I want
on.
to take a bigger breath, okay?
Yeah, it's just very impressive what you've managed to get done. I know Bob Baker kind of started it, and it's been great that the Environmental Commission has
Yeah,
invested time and people.
well, since you mentioned, yeah, we have to give credit to Bob and the green team that preceded us. They did a lot of work. And while I'm giving thanks, there were a lot of people who worked on this. There are a couple of those that are municipal employees that sort of a shout out. We have two of the police officers who were really very helpful. We have points in categories that we never had before. For example, emergency management, our communications, our vulnerable population. So Tim Richards, Sergeant Richards was really helpful. The prescription drug disposal program, that's Captain Butel, very, very helpful. Anytime we needed any information, Kathy Redley and John McDowell were right there. Could have done it without the help of a lot of people in the borough. And then we got points for things that we do routinely. It took a little work to kind of reformat it to get it right. And there were some helpful hints that we were able to put into place. And I'm thinking specifically of some of the IT issues. So Chris D'Amato was a big help. We got points in 3 categories that we never did before: digitizing information, public access, public engagement at meetings such as this, things like that. Again, there was good ground we cut that we could have done without Chris's help. So there were a lot of borough employees that were very helpful.
Great. Glad to hear that. Okay, thanks. Okay, anyone do the other one?
Oh, okay. Moving along. So this is a joint project of the Green Team and Communities in Crisis. And Tony Knoll from Community in Crisis is here as well. She's happy to speak about this as well. But I touched on this briefly at the council meeting before last in August. There's a program under the state called the Breathe Free program, the Breathe Easy program, and they provide signage for public spaces, for municipal spaces such as parks and ground. And I've handed out a copy of what the signs look like. They're not much bigger than this, so they're not obtrusive. And more importantly, perhaps they're free, so we can get them from the state. And our proposal is that we would place these in our parks and recreation areas. It's already compliant with what we already have, which is an ordinance that prohibits smoking. This is more or less a reminder. Oh, did I miss anything?
It's free. That's the key.
Yeah.
Is there anything that they require of us? I think you said it was a Breathe Easy program. So I think the question we had was, what's the quote? Is there a program or something?
I think the program was the distribution of signs.
That's it.
Correct.
That's just, that's the only.
On poles or on, put them on buildings?
Or on the fence.
You can do it any which way you want. Actually, sorry, I didn't make a
Yes.
photocopy of these, but here's a photograph of what it looked like. This one happens to be on a sign, but it could be in the window, it could be on the side of the building.
So they're metal.
Huh?
Is it metal? What's it made out of?
Ooh, I don't know. Is it made out of metal or are they?
I think it's like.
They're meant to be outdoors, so they got. So they come, they
I
come
just
like
wanted to see what they
that.
look like. That's all.
You choose how you want to post them or display them.
Yeah. We okay with that? Yeah, I think we're good. All right. We have to figure out how many we need.
Well, we have a list of public.
I
places.
know.
We'll give you a number.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jeff. All right, moving on, Stephen Grillo. You are up next. We are going to talk about, you're going to give us information on special improvement districts, options, and answers to the questions of the council.
Okay, so, excuse me, sorry, we're gonna do that, yep. I am going to recuse myself from these discussions, to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest.
Did you have a,
We have a presentation really recounting the questions that were offered to us. We had about 30 questions from you and your colleagues. So we answered all of those. We sent that to you all on Friday. So if there's any follow-up that you'd like to ask, we can certainly do that with the interest of time, certainly. We also have maps of the district. We have some financial options in terms of assessment calculations. So it's really up to you as to what you'd like to hear about tonight. Because we have counted this a number of times. So,
I think I'd like to put the presentation up for the public, if we can just go through that.
would you like me to start with the questions or skip over that?
I have to share the screen now because this is,
Oh, right.
Just here, we can see it. Alright, it's there now.
Okay, why don't we just go through them?
Okay, terrific. So good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Grillo. I am a city consultant. There is such a thing as a special improvement district consultant. I actually have the pleasure of also being the executive director of the special improvement district in Milburn Short Hills. And so I have been working with Main Street Bernardsville for the past 18 months or so, Olivia and her team on a feasibility study, whether this community should consider a special improvement district. We'll get into, well, quick raising of hands, but I don't know who's here for what. Who knows what a special improvement district is? All right, so think of it as a giant HOA. A assessment is put in place to generate a budget that is then spent on improvements for the town. So that could, they're all focused on economic development. So that could be streetscaping projects, that could be plantings, that could be business advocacy programs, large scale events, et cetera. And so it's a very quick overview. We do have some information in here about what SIDS do, but we've made this presentation probably half a dozen times at this point. So there were some specific questions from the meeting that we had on September 11th from the council on certain items relating to SIDS. So if you go to the next slide, I'll try to cherry pick a few of these. So what types of communities or municipalities is a SID not appropriate for? So that was a very interesting question. I've been running SIDS for 15 years, both in New York and New Jersey, and I consider myself a subject matter expert. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question before. And I thought it was really interesting. The question really is, it's not about appropriateness. It's about, are there service gaps in your community that you're looking to fill? And if so, if the government cannot fill those, then a SID is the right answer, because a SID is for supplemental services, things the government either cannot or should not be doing. And so in a lot of ways, what Olivia does day to day about putting on events or dealing with property owners or prospective tenants, that's not the job of government. That's not what government's really built for. And so an improvement district is set up to manage that. What stage of a town's life cycle is a SID most effective? I thought that was a great question as well. It really depends on what you're looking for from your SID. So I know redevelopment is a major item in this town now. If you were a town that had a 30% vacancy rate, I'd say, well, a SID should try to achieve things that are different than a town that right now is thriving fairly well and has the next challenge is, how do you deal with redevelopment? How is that going to impact the way that people use your sidewalks? How they park their cars, how they use the streets. So really, it's not so much about the life cycle, but really about where you are and what gaps you're trying to fill. Let's see, should we keep our Main Street designation? So for those of you not aware, Bernardsville through Main Street Bernardsville is what's called a national Main Street. That is a program at the federal level which filters down to the state level. And they provide usually capacity building funds for organizations like Main Street Bernardsville. By creating a special improvement district, we would keep Main Street Bernardsville, keep those funding sources from the federal government, but now be able to employ that special tax assessment, which would go to additional services. So my recommendation is certainly you should continue to keep your Main Street designation. There was a question, I think Al, Councilman Rivero asked about, would the borough why should the borough be a financial mechanism to ensure Main Street Bernardsville solvency? I think that the challenge there is that this is not about whether Main Street Bernardsville stayed in business or not. It's whether you have a capable economic development tool at your disposal, which you do. You have a Main Street organization. It's already working for your community. A special improvement district would simply enhance that through additional funding and resources. And then you do not currently fund community in crisis. So why fund Main Street? I think it's a bit of a false equivalency. Community in crisis, it's certainly an excellent organization, but they don't provide town-wide economic development services. This would be an investment in your community. If you think that economic development, business development is important for your community, then you should invest in downtown Bernardsville and the Bernardsville City. So I understand that both 501c3s that are in Bernardsville, but that's probably where the similarities end. But a fair question nonetheless. If you could go to the next slide. And I know we'll have some time for the public to ask questions now.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to go through all of these, but good question. Who would authorize the money if it was spent, if a SID was approved? I think Councilwoman Greenfield may have asked this question or one similar. The nice thing about a SID is though it is an autonomous entity, it's an independent 501c3 nonprofit. It is still under the jurisdiction of the town of the borough. So the budget is approved every year by the council. The board is appointed every year by the council. It's subject to audit, just like any other not-for-profit. So there's a lot of checks and balances. And so if there's something that the SID were doing that the borough council said, no, we don't like that. We don't think it's a successful project. We want you to stop spending money on it. That's simply part of the budget discussion on an annual basis. So the elected officials on the borough council certainly have a significant amount of oversight over what the SID does. We had some questions about where borough responsibilities and SID responsibilities meet. Oftentimes, I use that word before, supplemental services. There are business owners and property owners that don't maintain their properties. It's just the way life is. There are tree pits that don't get maintained. There are flowers that don't get maintained. Part of what the SID can do is handle those things where there is, again, that magic service gap, right? And so this isn't about taking over operations for a town. It isn't saying, well, you don't need a public works department anymore. We'll do everything. It's really about working together to make sure that where there are gaps in service, they are addressed for the benefit of the community. Move on to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time on assessment structure because we have some slides later on. But one question I believe again, Councilwoman Greenfield asked is about, can we assess the residents? So the answer is no, you can't assess residential properties in a SID. However, you can use the general fund of the town to pay a portion of the SID funds. So for instance, in Milburn, where I'm the director, half of my salary is paid through the general fund of the town. And then that's in addition to what we collect from the assessment. I spoke to a colleague in Spring Lake on the Jersey Shore. The town pays a certain amount every year to the SID, but there's a requirement that that money can only be used for capital projects that benefit the community. So it can't be used for events or social media or things like that. It has to be used for things that are seen on the sidewalks and the streets. So it is at your discretion as the council to decide if you do want to use money from the general fund, how you can use it. We did talk a little bit about budgets. We'll get to that in a few moments, as I said. And then really, I think the question, maybe Olivia is better suited to talk about this, is what is the difference between the funding you receive today in Main Street Bernardsville versus what you would receive as a SID?
The funding we've received up until this point as well, not just what we would be receiving in the future, are, of course, our grants that we've been receiving, donations from the public, our sponsorships, any ticket sales from events. Usually any funding that comes in from events, they pay for themselves. The events themselves don't quite make money necessarily, but that's not the purpose of the events. So between the sponsorships and the ticket sales, it just covers the cost of running those events. Most of the grants that we receive are usually specifically for the projects that they are requested. So we have a grant from the Somerset County Historical Commission, and that is specifically for the history project that we are working on. We cannot use it for anything else other than that specific project. So those types of fundings do limit us to what we are able to use those elements of funding for. So this obviously opens up funding to a little bit more of what we would be able to do, especially being able to reach other areas of town that we have yet been able to tap into, to be able to support and do additional programming for.
Can you just go over, you mentioned what our role is, what is the board made up of for the SID?
Sure. So the way the SID is formed is that you as the council will be required to pass an ordinance that establishes the boundaries, the properties that are within those boundaries, and the general rules of operation. The board is part of that process. So you as the council will dictate how that board is composed. It should be at least 51% comprised of property owners, business owners, but property owners. And then you can fill it in with community members, tenants that are within the improvement district. Typically, the mayor of the council has a designee on that board as well. We have developed a board composition that we are happy to share with you. But at the end, the board itself is appointed by you on an annual basis, and the majority of the voters are the assessed property owners within the district.
Thank you.
Mr. Grillo, just to follow up to that, Are SIDs subject to open public meeting laws, like other governing bodies in New Jersey?
Absolutely. I get one about once a week. So,
Do they have
Yes.
to publicize agendas and they're open to the public, or can you just elaborate?
sure. So every town handles their meetings differently. I err on the side of transparency. And so, for instance, the bid that I run, we have to post our agenda and our packet 48 hours in advance on the township website, just like every other board and commission. We are subject to public audit, all right, because we're an independent not-for-profit. It's then approved by my board and then submitted to the township committee for approval, then submitted to the state DCA. We have to file a 990 tax return as well as Charities Bureau filing, so we need to be in full financial compliance. In terms of the meetings that we have, public meetings with public comment, it's run essentially the same as a town council meeting. And we are subject to Oprah as well.
Thank you.
So if you go to the next slide, we can talk about vacancy. It's certainly a major question, I think, across New Jersey as economic times continue to be, I don't want to call them difficult, because there's a lot of places that are succeeding. I think they're challenging. And so first off, how does the city reduce the vacancy rate? Really, that is the strength of an executive director. I probably spend more of my time every day interacting with property owners and potential tenants than anything else. When I started in Milburn, we had a 16% commercial vacancy rate. Industry standard is 3%. We are now at 3%, 2.5 years later. I'm now turning businesses away because I don't have available space for them. That is through strategic partnerships, strong data collection, understanding zoning issues, parking issues, being able to really handhold tenants through the process. I'll be the first person that gets the call. Hey, I'm interested in a storefront. How do I even start this process? I'm afraid that I have to come in and get a variance, or what if they won't approve my sign, or I need a certain number of parking spaces. And I'm there to walk them through that process from the day I take that phone call to the day they open the door. And so as an executive director, having a strong executive director, which you have today at Main Street Bernardsville, I think that is the most important factor in reducing vacancy rate. And I'll tell you, towns with SIDs have lower vacancy rates than towns that don't, because you need an ambassador to sell your talent. You've got a lot of communities in New Jersey. It's a very dense state. There's a lot of options for people. You have to rise above that and make yourself sellable. There's some questions about poorly maintained storefronts, as well as recruiting businesses to vacant spaces. I love that question because they use the right businesses into vacant spaces. I think that's the partnership between an executive director and the council. What is the right business? What are you trying to attract to this town? And then what are the issues attracting them? So, for instance, in Milburn, we have a prohibition against first floor office space in the downtown. You have to get a variance to open an office or a medical office. So I've gone to the town and I said, you know, pediatricians are a great tool for economic development, because when a mom comes with her 2 kids and goes to the pediatrician, she's going to go get a slice of pizza, and she's going to go to the baby store and buy clothes, and maybe she'll go to the bookstore to buy books. And that one trip, instead of being to a strip mall or an office complex somewhere off the beaten path, is in the heart of our downtown. And now that family is spending money that they wouldn't have spent otherwise. And so we're in the process of changing our zoning ordinances to be more business friendly. So those are things that when you talk about what are the right businesses, that's one part of it. But what are the right mechanisms to encourage those businesses as well? If you have prohibitive zoning, that is a challenge. So, and then the last question, will the CID director be accessible to residents who want to open a business? I think you've got an incredible executive director right now, and I'm sure she will be wonderful when it comes to trying to attract and retain businesses. Can you go to the next slide, please? And we will talk about that. We're going to compare, the mayor asked me to look at some other towns of similar size, who have directors and who don't. And so we'll talk about that momentarily. Maybe Olivia, you can talk a little bit more about this since you're on the ground every day.
The property owners, the business owners are very mixed. And what I have found is that, like everything else, and I know you all are well versed, especially with recent discussions and redevelopment and a number of things, that you're looking at almost half and half of a lot of responses on a lot of issues. I find the folks that are very heavily engaged with the things that we've already done so far, which as much as we've done, we've barely scratched the surface of what we could obviously do, because there's so much more available out there. So the folks that have been very heavily engaged and that are, a part of the events and do a lot more with us already, seem to be a little bit more in favor of this program. The folks that we've only spoken with recently or have only just found out about some of these things or don't engage with us often, don't yet seem to be positive or positively favoring that. And I can understand why. And I know that this is a very challenging topic. So we've definitely seen a lot of positive, but we've also seen some of that negative too. So I understand where you all are in the positions that you are all in, and that this is a very challenging topic to discuss. But I certainly hope that we are all looking at what some of those other businesses that engage with us are doing as well, which is looking at the long term on this. Right now, yes, it's difficult right now, but the idea is that moving forward in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, however long it takes, that this is a continued program. It's not something that just starts and then stops in a couple of years because, oh, well, we reached, maximum capacity with our vacancy rate, so we're good, it needs to continue after that. So having a more structured program, a solid system in place for the long term is really what ultimately the goal is and where I have found so far the feedback has been. So it's not all are in favor or all are not in favor. Obviously, there's a little bit of everything.
Would you go to the next slide, please? So the mayor asked me to reach out to towns of similar size in terms of population, and those that had SIDS. And so there's about 100 special improvement districts in New Jersey. Believe it or not, the state doesn't track special improvement districts. So no one actually knows the answer as to how many there are. We estimate about 100. And so I spoke to as many folks in these towns as I possibly could. You'll see they are in Monmouth, Morris, Somerset, Bergen, Warren, Passaic. And so they're pretty far spread, starting with Spring Lake with 2,800 people. And then I went to Brook because it's in Somerset County with about 12,000. So the average number of people in each town taking out Bernardsville is 8,500 people. You guys are about 7,700. So where I was able to speak to folks, I asked them what their assessment was. So the assessment and the budget are two different things. The assessment is the amount of money collected from the properties within the district on an annual basis. So for instance, in Spring Lake, they collect $89,000 in the assessment. $134,000 though is the total budget, because that could be money from the town, that could be grant money, that could be sponsorships, et cetera. So you start with the assessment and then the total budget is typically higher. Looking at the average of all these different communities, $192,000 is the average assessment. I could tell you in Millburn, ours is 204. And then the total budget is 230. So that's about another $40,000 that's collected through secondary sources. Our budget, again, in Millburn is about $300,000. So we have about $100,000 in additional funds that we bring on that are not on the responsibility of the assessed properties. Number of businesses, 227 is the average of these communities. You guys are at 190 or so. So you're right there in the ballpark. And then executive director salary, that's a little bit tougher. I'll tell you, the towns that gave me no response to inquiry are the towns that didn't have executive directors. So for 2 weeks, I've been waiting for phone calls or emails back. If they don't answer my call, they're probably not answering the call of the business owner that wants to set up shop there either. And so it's very important that as we go through this process, whether it's a full-time staff or part-time, whatever it is, you have to have someone that is dedicated as an executive director to running these programs. I would not in good conscience recommend creating a SID if you don't have someone that's working at least 21 hours a week, especially for a town. I know in terms of population, Bernardsville is fairly small, but this is a premier community. This is a really wonderful community in a great county, and obviously your SID should reflect that quality. So Mayor, you asked me to put this together. Do you have any questions?
I'm thinking, the town that we had that beat us out for the best small town, wasn't it Frankfurt? Do they have a SID?
They do. They're a much larger town.
And they've been doing it for a long time.
Cranford was actually the first SID in New Jersey.
Oh.
I think they go back to 1985 or so. But most of the premier communities have SIDs: Westfield, Cranford, Somerville, Millburn, you name it, right? And so it's an effective economic development tool. I mean, that's why 100 of these communities exist. So it's,
There's a Washington, a tiny town in Washington, there's so many Washingtons in New Jersey, but it's in Suffolk County, I think. And they were very small.
And I did include Madison in here. Madison's larger, but it's a unique town. Actually, if you were at the public event that we had back in April, we had the executive director there. She runs the economic development office there, but it functions as an improvement district. And her biggest complaint is that she spends most of her time chasing money and not providing services for the town. And so she's been begging them to create a special improvement district over the years and has not been able to do so, but just wanted to throw that in as well, just for comparison. So the next slide, this is what everybody wants to know about. How do you fund this thing? So I broke this down into 4 pretty common methods, and please, council members, stop me as we go, but there's the traditional method. All commercial properties within a district pay the same rate, and that rate will, let's see, if we calculate it for you guys, to get to $175,000 a year of an annual budget, your rate would be 0.0013% on each property. So 0.0013. So everybody would pay that rate regardless of the value of the property. And then, of course, the more valuable the property, the higher amount it pays because everybody's paying on the same rate.
Based on square footage of.
Based on typically it's on a commercial assessed value. Okay, and then also, so we've had questions about mixed use properties. What you would do is you would only charge on the assessed value of the commercial portion. And then residential properties, not-for-profit and government sites are exempt. So these are commercial properties that we pay. That's sort of think of it as the flat fee, right? That assessment rate is simply how you get to your budget number. A tiered method, this is something that you can employ here because we are looking at 3 different parts of town. We're looking at downtown and then going down 202 and then past Childs, and there's a sort of 3rd smaller district. You could, if you wanted to do that, say downtown has the highest amount of businesses, the highest density, has the highest need. They'll pay a higher rate than the other districts as we go further out. That's just a tiered method. Something you could consider also is, let's say you have a shopping center where in the triple net lease, maintenance or flowers are included. Well, that's already taken care of in their rent. You could reduce their tiered amount to say, don't pay double. You're already getting that service. The SID is not providing it because it's already there. So you could change that up. So you could have 3 different tiers for your 3 different districts. You can take either A or B and then throw in municipal funding. I mentioned, the example in Milburn where they cover half of my salary, or I mentioned in Spring Lake where they cover the capital improvements, but only capital improvements, right? So that's established. Whether that's ordinance or resolution, that's something that you guys can hash out with your attorney, but certainly that's something that's an option. And then the 4th option, and this is fairly rare, but I wanted to put in there just for context. You could, if you had, say, I know you don't have charged parking here, but if you had parking revenues, you could take a portion of those parking revenues and put it towards the assessment or towards the budget. Because those people that are parking in your downtown are benefiting from the improvements that you've provided, but they're also using the services. They're making the sidewalks dirty. They're knocking into planters and all the rest of it. And so you can be pretty creative, potentially generating revenue that way. And then what we talked about as a team was this sort of graduated model. So you go to the next slide. So you take these 4 ideas, and then we've been basing this on $175,000 a year budget. That is the ideal number, but recognizing this is a new project, it's not something that's ever been done before here in Bernardsville. We set it up sort of as a pilot project. So in year 1, we created 2 options. The first one would be, they're both a $50,000 budget. $35,000 would come from the assessed property owners, and then $15,000 would come from the town. Or option B, if you don't want to go to the stakeholders, you could do it just from the town at $50,000 or any number that you see fit. It's up to you. Year 2 in that progression, 40% of 175 is 70. So the borough contribution is 30 for a total of 100, and it goes up in terms of the assessment on the property owners and down in terms of the responsibility of the town until you get to the point where the property owners are paying the full 175 and the borough is paying 0 come year 5. So that is a graduated way of doing it. Certainly, I think a very good model that you can employ certainly doesn't put the burden immediately on the assessed property owners. And then there's a question that had come up at the previous meeting about, well, what if it's not working? Well, you can simply build that into your establishing ordinance that says there'll be a 3-year, analysis, and we'll determine if this is viable or not. And so there's always an escape clause if you build it in, because you're the ones that are building this, right? There's a board and there's an executive director, but they are simply created by you as a mechanism. So you could choose any of those 4 methods of assessment. You could choose this graduated. You could say, we'll do the graduated, but only at 150 or only at 100. It's completely up to you how you want to attack this. We're just here to give you the options. So any questions on those 2 slides?
Just one
Okay.
for me on the implementation front. How long does it actually take to turn around? In other words, from a body approving it to a SID being up and running, what's the delta there?
The delta is a first and second reading of an ordinance. It's really how quickly you can prepare the ordinance, and I'll defer to your attorney, but it can be done very, very quickly if you want. And, we've been working at this for over a year. I think, there's no sort of tactical questions at this point. You absolutely can do this. It's a matter of setting-
Electing the commercial board and sort of establishing the actual mechanism that'll eventually create the putting the executive director in place, et cetera.
Well, you probably need, let's be cautious and say about a month to put together your ordinance. You'll need to amend the bylaws, assuming that Main Street Bernardsville becomes the contracted entity that runs this. They'll have to amend their bylaws to match what the ordinance says. You'll have to have a first reading and then a second reading of an ordinance. In that time, it's always great to recruit your board so that you know on day 1 who those board members would be. And then there's things like, yes, you have to appoint a management entity. If your management entity is Main Street Bernardsville, Olivia is the director, that's easy. Setting up a separate bank account, things like that. But for the most part, really the delay in any of this is simply the passage of the ordinance and really drafting the ordinance. But this is the kind of thing that could probably be done in 2 months, just based on required waiting periods.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about the service portfolio when you graduated mom? And then we're done.
So these are obviously just options. There's a lot that would need to go into what exactly we would do. We did earlier in the year in May, we sent out a needs assessment survey. I've walked around a little bit. I know some other fellow business owners in town have also walked around a little bit, and we encourage, it's online, we encourage businesses to provide responses to us, because if you don't share with us what you would need, what Stephen was talking earlier about the gap, what that gap is, if we don't know what it is, then we can't fill it. So having that feedback from the property and business community is really important for us to be able to know what that looks like, so that we can do the proper things. Because we can come up with great ideas all day long. They don't always necessarily mean that they will be effective, as long as many folks as possible can be engaged with giving us responses. So this is really just an example of what could be done. It's not just a needs assessment survey. There's obviously a lot more data that goes into it, and making sure that whoever we have as our board, whatever additional staff that we would be bringing on, because this is not just a 1-person show. This would be more staff, which may or may not even include me for that matter. If Main Street is not the one that would be selected to run this program, that's obviously more than fine. But making sure that whoever is in place and whatever team is in place is jiving properly with the correct board and coming up with the programs and processes and all of the necessary elements that make sense for what this program will look like right away, and then moving forward over the long term. So business support obviously is the number one, and making sure that anything that the businesses say that they are looking for, whether it's access to capital, information, or a number of other things, is available. I'm not going to go through every single bullet point unless everybody wants me to, because we've been here for quite a while already. Obviously, marketing and promotions, some of those things we've already done, expanding our reach for events to the north side of town. A lot of our events seem to be coordinated and operating in the historical district for a number of reasons. But being able to expand that to more of the community and include more of our businesses would be a big focus as well in our marketing and promotion. In fact, right now we are working with a number of publications locally that are no additional cost as a result of funding that we already have. So the more funding we have, we can work with more resources, including the City Lifestyle Magazine, the local newspaper, etc. And obviously doing more of a digital marketing as well, and then including more events that are not just community engaging, which is what we've done so far, but also business engaging as well. So the second year as part of this program, we would work more towards parking solutions. I know that was a topic on the council agenda, or maybe it wasn't on the agenda last time, but I know it was something that you guys had discussed about coming up with more solutions for parking and how to make that work. Working with experts in these areas. There are consultants and folks that are genuinely experts in parking, believe it or not, who can provide us with actual tangible studies and results. And then creating more pedestrian spaces. There's study after study after study that creating spaces where people can gather as people, not cars can gather in parking lots. That those are more effective strategies to get folks walking around town, which is something that a lot of businesses have told me that they just don't have. We don't see people walking around town. So how do we do that? And this is one of the ways that we can do that, is to create more public spaces. I know Wilbur recently has done some shutting down of streets on certain days of the week, especially in the summertime, where they can get folks together. There's live music, there's shopping, there's a number of things that are going on to really engage the community to be out and about and walking our streets. So there's a ton more, and I have to accentuate on the idea that it's not just about cleaning the streets, which is obviously very important. I know weeds are a huge topic as well. I know those have been an issue, but I believe that they have been fairly resolved over the last couple of weeks, which is great. But that's not all of it. It's a culmination of a lot of different elements that get put together, which is what the Main Street program ultimately does. But finding that funding to be able to do so much more, as much as I would love to get as much as we can for free, obviously that can't happen, as we all know. So we are here to try to do a little bit more, whatever that ends up looking like, to be able to accomplish our goals over the next 4 to 5 years, whatever those goals may look like.
Would you mind just skipping ahead? We have a map, which is always the most important piece after how you fund this thing, is where is it? Yeah, so this is the draft map. This was part of our feasibility assessment. When I was originally tasked with this, we were looking at the Claremont section, which is DCL in that light green. We decided that the business density there was not large enough to substantiate the services that we would be charging for, so we've removed that. And there's a couple of industrial spaces that are in the bottom left-hand corner, which probably would not benefit as well. So we've tried to be as fair and judicious as possible about making this really just commercial districts. Again, this comes back to the decision of the council. So you are only included in the business improvement district if the block and lot is included in the original ordinance. And so you can remove properties at your discretion prior to voting on this if you feel that a property is not appropriately served or whatever the case may be. You could also, if you wanted today, you could say, listen, I just agree with you, Steve. I think Claremont would be a good place to get services. Let's put that in. You could absolutely do that. Again, this is like the kind of the grand Chinese menu of economic development. You can pick whatever you want and make it work for your town. No SID is identical because it is catered to local government and local control. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions? I also invited Matt here, who is our development attorney, but has also has experience with SIDs, setting them up, dealing with them, and I thought maybe you could, if you have anything to add.
Good evening, Mayor, council members here, and I guess Clark, Matt Jessup from the Scotland Endowment. It sounds like you've been having this discussion for quite a while. The presentation, I have the benefit of seeing it, it's incredibly comprehensive, so I don't know how much you've heard and seen already. I don't want to take, too much of everybody's time. I'll just add a couple thoughts, right? From my perspective, SIDs are a mechanism that allow private business, right? Private sector to lead in their own revitalization and to run services that benefit business owners. You couple private sector leadership and governance with the government's ability to special assess in amounts that are determined by the property owners themselves. And you create this partnership that allows for the private sector to effectively govern itself. Now, thankfully, that governance is limited scope, right? Very limited scope. They're not determining, policy about parks or about schools or anything else. It's very limited to the activities within the business improvement district, but it does allow them sort of that self-governance and control. It also alleviates from the municipality, and I heard this earlier, I think, sort of additional burdens, right? Municipal buildings in terms of staffing are getting smaller and smaller every year. Tax dollars, precious tax dollars have competing interests, right? The tax dollars are precious. We want to make sure we spend them all wisely. There's a lot of different things we want to do with those dollars. The SID sort of solves both of those problems from my perspective by creating dedicated resources and personnel to effectuate and achieve what the business owners are looking for, while also providing a funding mechanism that, as you saw, can fund all, some, or a portion of the operations. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't altruism, right? Business owners want to make money. We want business owners to make money. Everybody wants the businesses to be a success. So in my experience, the SID will rise and fall on the interest of the business owners, right? So the leadership, the volunteers, the embracing of the concept, and of course, if they see revenues go up, they will be active and more active participants. If they don't, a year, 2, 3 years later, then obviously things may ultimately fall apart. But I think the benefits certainly include the fact that, again, private entities get to basically self-govern themselves. You are spending less time finding money. I think I heard this earlier, less time finding money and more time spending your energy on creating and solving for the needs of businesses. It is limited and self-control. You also see that business owners generally don't vote. And I don't mean that as a political statement. I mean that in terms of generally you find that most business owners do not live in the community where their business is located. So a SID allows them greater influence over the policies that impact them, because they can't necessarily vote if they like or don't like what this governing body or a future governing body are doing, right? So that's an important, I think, consideration as well. Last 2 things I wanted to add. Councilman Rivera brought up a couple questions about public access. The budget process is very similar to the budget process that you went through, right? It's multiple resolutions, introduction, advertisement of a public hearing, holding of a public hearing, and then a final adoption, at least 28 days later. So amendment process similar to yours as well. If they're minor amendments, you can go right away. If not, you have to go through that process again. So the annual budget approval process, which goes through you, that is a very public process, similar to the process that you go through with your own budget, which I know you're all more than familiar with. There's similarly a public process each year when the assessment is actually set, that involves a public hearing as well. So property owners, business owners have the ability to come in and be heard on the amount of the assessment related to each year's budget. And lastly, I'm sure you know this already, but you can create what you can create, you can destroy, right? So you do create the SID by ordinance, but if either it's not as successful as everyone envisioned, if it's moving in a direction that is contrary to the policies that everybody envisioned when they first took it on, whatever the reasons are, you have very broad discretion to create one, and you also can turn around by ordinance and terminate the SID as well. So that process, the creation, the dissolution, the budgeting process, the assessment process, all of that really sits in your control.
Okay, thank you. No, that was not there. Does anybody have a question from that? No? Al? No, you good? Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Do you have enough people to do the minutes? Yes. Okay. We just need to approve the minutes from August 10th and August 13th. Well, then should you be here for the discussion?
No.
No.
They can hold off on the minutes.
Yeah, let's do the minutes later and come back for that. Okay. It is now an open session for items not listed for a public hearing. So if anyone in the public would like to be heard, please remember to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And I'm going to ask, because of the size of the crowd, that everyone only speak once. Fran.
Hi. I just wanted to give a few quick library updates. Thank you, Mayor, for coming to our fundraiser from the foundation and pulling the raffle tickets this weekend. And also a thank you to the American Association of University Women for a very nice grant for our collection. In our last meeting, we worked on a resolution to approve the restrooms project that will be before you tonight. I can answer any questions about that then. And we're also working on our strategic plan, which I hope to present to you guys if possible in the next month or so. And the thing I wanted to highlight to the public was that when we had our budget challenges earlier this year, and we had to make a plan to mitigate them and to work with them, we were anticipating on closing one of the weekend days for September through December. Instead of doing that, we've selected a few extra holidays. These won't be holidays for full-time staff, but they'll be closures for the library for Columbus Day on Sunday and Monday, for Halloween, because historically we look at all the numbers, no one comes to the library on Halloween. Same thing for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we'll close early. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, we will not be open, and December 23rd. So that's our solution. Instead of closing Saturdays or Sundays, which would disproportionately affect people that might work in restaurants Monday through Saturday, or just their schedules. The weekend days are extra important to some parts of our community. So we hope to see you in October for all of our Friends of the Library Week events, and that's it.
Thank you. Actually, that's a great plan. I think that's really, thank you for being creative and doing that, changing the dates like that. I think that's going to work out well.
Thanks.
No, hang on.
Good evening, Johanna Wessinger, Washington Corner Road, Environment Commission. At the last meeting, the shade tree came up, and I'm grateful that Dr. Hammond went over some of the things that Sustainable Jersey wants for connects with this shade tree committee. So I don't know what the criteria was. I'm sure you had a good reason, because we had attrition that we had control for the shade tree committee. But I would like, now that we have the green team up and running, I'd like to address that again, unless there's some reason that the council does not want me to try to get a shade tree. There's definite municipal advantage to having a shade tree entity by itself. Hazardous insurance, opportunities for grants, involvement of more of our community in it. And also, in addition to seeing if I can get permission from you to try my best to try to get one going, I'd like to suggest that in the interim that the council consider having perhaps per diem arborists, because we really have some decisions in town that need some expert opinion. I used to work with Matlock, Forester, Renee, our tree conservation officer is excellent. I've worked with people, they'll give me information, but they're not arborists. And even picking a tree or shade tree, an arborist does something beyond that. Almost, I might learn a little bit about that. And that is they have connections with nurseries. That's a whole other set of skills to be able to pick out material that will survive. The tree that I planted my husband's memorial at the Girl Scout at Kiwanis Park, Peter Birnbaum, who is experienced, brought me out to 2 nurseries. He did research, he was gonna bring me a third. All those trees look semi-dormant to me. I don't know how he picked out the quality, but that's another skill. He knew the questions to ask, where it came from, how long it was on things. So I'm thinking that we could benefit from having an expert who knows our town, who works with the Works Department, who works with the administrator, so that we get the very best for our town for trees.
Thank you, Johanna. Yeah, and it's not, I mean, I've been trying to get people for
I
shade.
know you have.
I know it was a fairly active committee, and then one by one, they either moved or aged out or, yeah, I don't want to say that. So,
All right, so it's okay
I've been
here.
advertising, we've been asking, and I think maybe because they used to meet at 8:30 in the morning, that was the real.
I saw that. Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, if you can find people, we'll be happy to appoint them.
Thank
You
you.
got it. Thanks. On the X, that's our.
Glenn Miller, Washington Corner Road, Fire Prevention Committee in Bernardsville. We're here tonight with Fire Chief, the Deputy Chief, and my fellow committeemen. I want to thank Nancy, our CFO, who was on vacation, who jumped on a Zoom meeting, and all the council members that took time to speak with you today. In light of some discrepancies that they brought to our attention and we brought to their attention, I'm asking that resolution 23-188 be pulled from this evening and postponed until the next council meeting so that we can do further investigation and work together to see if there's some type of resolution we can get. The Fire Prevention Bureau in Berners Township has done a phenomenal job with inspecting our community and doing its job, but we seem to have some financial discrepancies that we'd like to get resolved so that the council and the administration can work with us. That would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay. Anyone else?
Can we talk about the SID presentation a moment?
Just come on the X.
Okay, hi. I'm Chris Harrell, live in Bedminster in the Cartersville section, but I own commercial property in Bernardsville. I just want to make a couple comments. I was on a home association board for 10 years. I can tell you, we didn't exempt certain parts of our homeowners association because maybe they were on a distant cul-de-sac. If it's going to be assessed to all commercial property owners, it should be to everybody. That's the only fair way to do it. And secondly, it's just a misnomer to say that this tax or assessment is really not on the property owners, because almost everybody has what are called net leases. So all the expenses on the building gets put to the people who actually own the businesses that we lease out to. So their costs are going to go up, and they're already stressed, because of the economy, because of whatever fees that they get charged that they did already. So it's really not the property owners that are going to be paying for this, it's the businesses that are in existence here. So, it really should be transparent that way to make sure everybody knows that it's the businesses that are going to be taxed, not the property owners. That's all we comment on this.
Thank you.
We have Christina Castelli. How you doing?
Christina, you have to unmute her.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciated the presentation and I appreciate what the committee is trying to do for our downtown area. I can fully appreciate the desire to fill vacancies and so forth. I have a few questions. I am both a resident of Bernardsville and also a business owner in Bernardsville. And I feel as though there's a little bit of play going on with our pocketbooks, unfortunately. I think there hasn't been enough transparency up front. We would really like to know as business owners what the thoughts are and how we can contribute to those ideas before they become etched in stone. There's a lot of money to pay and it's hard to understand exactly what it's for. I'm still not quite understanding, why are we paying for general improvements in the town, like street cleaning and planters? I mean, some of us don't really need that service. We already have that service, or it's not applicable. I'm also hoping that there's consideration for whether or not the folks in town are willing to pay more. Are you willing to pay more for the goods and services that you've enjoyed all of these years along these roads? Because the expenses are going to have to get passed along. They're too expensive for us to foot the bill ourselves. Some business owners are thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And, every business is different. I'm not entirely clear as to how certain businesses, for example, like ours, we own a music academy. We don't sell sandwiches. So it's a very different type of business model, right? People are not coming to town browsing and then, picking out a violin to take home. I wish they would, but that's not what's typically done in our building, at least. And so I think we have a very different kind of business need than somebody, maybe in the center of town who sells pizza. And they obviously don't need what we need. So, how those factors are considered into the assessments would really be great to discuss ahead of any decisions about what assessments would be made. I also think it's really important when you're talking, how fast can we get this done? This is our pocketbooks we're talking about. So, it has to do with liquidity. And while some people might only owe hundreds of dollars a year, others are left with tens of thousands a year. What's the liquidity on that? How fast can we as business owners cough that up? And how fast can we transfer that to our patrons or our customers? It's kind of hurtful to have to think about that, especially as we're just coming out of COVID and trying to recover from that. What is our responsibility in trying to keep costs down for our customers versus, trying to pay for the vacant spaces in town? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine. There was somebody else.
Kathy.
Oh, Kathy Peachy.
Hi, Kathy Peachy, 70 Chilton. Good evening, everyone. Love our fire department, know how much they do. I hear each and every whistle, so I know they're working hard all the time, every day. Really appreciated Johanna's idea to have an arborist on town. I think that's important. In my own neighborhood, we're losing not only dead trees, but healthy trees left and right. And so I think that's a valuable addition for the town. As far as the SID is concerned, I've been listening and taking notes, and I'm happy to write a letter to the council as well. I so appreciate Olivia's energy and dedication. I've supported and volunteered for many of her events. And you have the same thing. The first time the presenter spoke, he mentioned an HOA, and he said there's an independent vibe under town jurisdiction. And that just sounds like another potential layer of harassment or of retail harassment and ultimately council oversight. So I just didn't like that HOA comparison. And I don't believe in the double negative objective. I don't believe that that holds true. He mentioned that not having a SID is not wanting to thrive. And I don't believe it. I think that all the retail here does want to thrive. And that's with or without a SID. I don't necessarily think that all of the retailers in town will get one more customer because of that. And so would be curious to know who in fact, which the retailers in fact would benefit. And also, since the borough is not a financial mechanism, and since Main Street is in fact already working, then why impose the SID fee, right? Other town teams like Parks and Recreation and Public Works, they can be solicited to do some of the work that maybe is too burdensome for Main Street, Bernardsville. And then, we're creating new businesses here in town, but we're asking the existing retailers to pay for that lure. And I'm not sure if that might feel fair to them or not. Sid, they mentioned that there would be open public meetings. And I was just like, oh, I prefer not to have one more layer of public meeting, one more public audit, one more, just layer for us all to be cognizant of. Bernardsville parking is not Millburn parking. Pediatricians on the first level, it might be that a mother with a sick child is just going to get her kid well and wants to go home. Not necessarily going and buying pizza or clothes or whatever. So I was also uncomfortable with the potentially exclusionary language of bringing in the right business. So I think I already mentioned that I didn't like the potentially strong arm attitude of an HOA. It's not necessarily a negative, it's just a different voice for those retailers.
Yeah.
Okay, I could write the letter, because there was a few more things that I took notes on for it, and as well as some solutions to include.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Andrew, we 20 Columbia Drive. I moved here about 5 months ago. I'm a resident. But I grew up in Basking Ridge. So I've been a patron of Bernardsville for almost 4 years. My first job was at King's. Rest in peace. So I was so excited to move to Bernardsville. And I think that we hear a lot of kind of the challenges and things like that. And that's fair. That's what this is meant for. But we were so excited because there are so many places that people want to go here. There's so many trip drivers, right? Great restaurants. I mean, there's a school next to downtown, there's a library next to downtown. Not all towns have this. We came from a town that didn't have all this. Came from a town that had one bar, it wasn't a very good bar. You got good bars. And so I think that the point I'm trying to make is that we have what a lot of towns don't have and want. And so when we came here, we were so excited to go and spend time downtown. And then I don't want to call it the weeds, but like it boggled our mind that there were weeds growing. And it's like, how can something that simple or seemingly simple not be taken care of? And I don't know what the solution is. And it sounds like there are a few different options. But from a resident's perspective, and someone who just moved here and wants to be here for a very long time, I think somebody in the last meeting, maybe it was you, Jay, or someone else, mentioned, hey, maybe we could put this to a vote, like it's done with like an open space thing that the residents could then vote on. Because if this doesn't work out with the SID, and it's like, well, you know, Madison has twice as many residents as us plus, but you know, their budget is, I don't know, what was it, 150K? Like, let's talk, like, let's put it to vote. This is democracy. Maybe the residents could fulfill. I don't know. And people are going to throw tomatoes at me. But I'm just saying, the point I'm trying to make is like, I don't think inaction is what we need right now. If the SID doesn't work, then we can't just kick the can. There needs to be something. And I think a lot of the residents and people I spend time with at the town pool and with young kids, they want to see something happen because we want to spend half of our day downtown, going to restaurants, going to businesses, frequenting your businesses. That's it.
Thank you. Did you bring anything?
Andrew Malia.
Hi, I'm Christina Gianni. I own a business, BGT in Bernardsville, and I live at 60 Highview Avenue in Bernardsville. I appreciate everything that Main Street has accomplished thus far. My only hesitation with the SID is that I would hope that it would be more business driven rather than community driven. Although I appreciate the synergetic synergy. I appreciate that there has to be the community outlets as well. I think that this sounds like it would be more business minded and focused. And therefore, we just hope to alleviate, if we did do a trunk or treat, the small stores don't have to buy $200 worth of candy. Because that's a huge expense for the small stores. And also to appreciate that many of the stores are approached constantly for benefits, for fundraising, for donations. That's another, business expense that we have. So going forward, just hoping that it would really be business driven, community or business driven rather than community events. That's it.
Good point.
I also would like to address some comments about the SID.
Brenda Kernan, I represent Bernardsville Center. And we have about 28 businesses at the center. I am a big advocate of the SID. I think that I want to, I totally agree with what Andrew said, and this gentleman here both had excellent comments about the SID, and Christina as well, that this has to be an economic and business oriented solution group. And the problem that we have seen in this town, and we've had the center for over 20 years, is the coordination and the support from the council. We really haven't seen, Mary Jane has been amazing. But I'm just saying that I think the businesses need a coordinator and a problem solver to get their issues across, and they are not voters. I'm not a voter. And I'm the second largest taxpayer. These people are paying the second largest taxpayer in the town. How do they get their information to the council on issues? I think that, Bernardsville has so much to offer, and this would just sort of bring the two bodies together, and it would be a win-win for everyone. Taxes, the residents, the businesses, the aesthetics. What else do you want in the town? I don't know. That's my.
Thank you. I saw Mark getting up.
Mark Malillo, 210 Campbell Road. I'd like to thank the many people who volunteer countless hours to our town. Much of their efforts go unnoticed, but that doesn't change how important they are. That being said, if the council votes to pay for the services of one of these people, where does it leave the other faithful volunteers like firefighters or first responders, let alone those of the many committees that run our town? You can't pick and choose whose job is more important. Main Street Bernardsville is a volunteer organization that helps in bringing together our community. It is a good thing. Just like Chef to our school board. The organization is a volunteer base that works alongside the school board and PTA to raise money and support. If we fund Main Street Bernardsville, why shouldn't we consider paying other leadership roles of such magnitude? Where does it start and where does it end? Finally, it has been said that SID is a vehicle to support our downtown businesses, but if each individual business was asked, would they find it a majority? For instance, how would it help a dry cleaner or a car wash or a mechanic or a mattress store, things of that nature? What would really help our businesses is giving them the much needed parking that has plagued our downtown for decades. The council should focus their attention on parking and let Main Street Bernardsville continue as a valuable volunteer organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Really, Brian stood up already, sorry. It's too fast.
Hi, Dr. Brian Wallace, I'm a Hills chiropractic. We also live in Bernardsville. I'm a business owner as well as the property owner. I am in full support of this bid. I think it is one of the best things we could do as a town. I think the excitement that I've seen over the last couple of years about the different events that are going on in town, I haven't seen since we participated in Sounds Around Town, which was an amazing event that went on in this town for years and was one of the things that helped me grow my business tremendously as a chiropractor in town. But who would think Sound Around Town would be a benefit to a chiropractor in town? But I think it is up to the business owner to be able to participate in the events that are going on in town, because as a small business owner, the only way that you build your business is by building relationships. That's how you make your business better, especially in a small town. So to Mark's point, a dry cleaner or a whatever business, you can still meet people and build rapport and get to know the people outside of your four walls. Because if you do that, you will grow your business. And if you put the energy into growing your business, you will get that back. And from the events that I've been a part of, that I've participated in, have only been beneficial. And I would encourage every business owner that is here and who is online to go and look yourself on what your participation number would be, because in my opinion, it is a very small amount of money, and your return on investment will be tenfold if you really find out what this is about and how this could benefit your business and how you can get out and participate. Because if you just sit in your four walls and expect business to come to you, it's not going to happen just because you open up. And I think it is a no-brainer, and I would encourage council to vote yes on this. And to Brenda's point, I think it's only going to be in the best interest of the town long term, and I think it will help all of us grow business-wise if we put in the time and effort to participate and find out what it's about. And if you have questions and you don't understand it, please call Olivia. She will tell you everything, and she is an open book. She is one of the most honest and people with integrity I've met, and I think she's done a great job, and I hope we continue with that.
Thank you. Maria?
Maria Nadell, I live at 1 Winter Lane in Huddersville. The minister, Chris Harold's partner in my Brook properties. There are currently 6 businesses there. I have the question that I have, the big question is, you talk about vacancies in town. There aren't that many vacancies. The vacancies are the Palmer properties, Advanced Realty's properties, the Kings, which I understand is going to be occupied, the Audi dealership. I don't know the other vacancies. We had the print shop that was vacant, but everybody was worried about the redevelopment that was supposed to happen, and those spaces are occupied now. So I don't know, what are the vacancies on there? That's my question.
Actually, Libby, you know those numbers? I thought you did that at one point.
We had started everything at around 12%, and then now we're at 8.
It's about 9%.
8 or 9, right?
But is that including the Palmer property?
It doesn't include because they're
Right.
vacant, but you are correct. They're
And
slated
those,
to
the
be
other
developed.
Advanced Realty's
Correct.
properties,
Yes, yeah.
and the King's property and the Abbott
So
property.
you have one,
No, ours is occupied now.
the one with the brown paper?
He's
Yeah.
renting it, yeah, it's being
We're doing
renovated.
big renovation.
We had permits taken out and everything, it's almost finished.
Excellent.
Yeah, and there'll be a big opening, what?
Is Frank?
Yeah, Frank, it's already open, the walls open.
Oh, good.
There were, you can come and visit if you want. But that's all that was my question, because if those are the vacancies, well, as soon as that happens, as soon as they fill them up, then there won't be any vacancies. I've been shopping in Bernardsville for 35 years, and I've only lived in this area for 12 years. So,
Yeah,
and now that the Bernards Inn is gonna have
David Burke.
David town's gonna be hopping.
Although for those of us that have been here 50+ years, I could tell you how many different businesses have been in all those different buildings, how many times they've turned over. So that sometimes is an issue too. They turn over quickly.
But some of the people have been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I can't see.
We have Grant and
Who is that?
Grant and,
Grant?
yeah.
Are you there? Grant?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. My name is Grant Moffett. I live in Bernardsville, 27 Sterling Road. And Christina Castelli and I run the music school here in town. And speaking of vacancies, a couple of years ago, we took over that building and totally occupied that space, which was mostly vacant in that section of town. I just wanted to share a couple of my thoughts and echo some of the thoughts that others have had, that with this SID, that not all businesses are the same and not all businesses have the same needs. So while some businesses like restaurants and other retailers thrive on drop-in business. A lot of the businesses in town rely on other types of customers. So to have a single entity kind of drive events and other things that might not benefit everyone equally, and so forcing everyone to pay an assessment where the return on that is not necessarily equal for everyone is a concern of mine. I also wanted to share another concern that with the type of council that we have, a very conservative council, that adding a layer of effectively taxes and regulation is not a very conservative ideal. Letting businesses decide their own fate, letting them go out and make those networks and spend their money in marketing and do the things that they want to do, but to add basically another layer of bureaucracy and basically a forced hand in here, spend charge this fee and then we'll figure out what to do with it later, and not have a very good direction on that, to me is not a particularly welcoming idea. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much for your time.
Grant, and you did a beautiful job on that building, by the way.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Rick Weiss. I live in Borough, New Jersey. I own RY Jewelers for a year and a half now. Before that, I was in town for 30 years. Phillips and Frederick's Jewelers, I had a partner at that time. I'm pro Sid. Love the Sid, love the idea. I'm gonna go back half a step. The businesses are, the owners of the properties do get assessed, like this gentleman said. But Olivia, am I correct? All that money that's assessed to that particular building does not necessarily have to go to the retailer. Isn't it possible for the owner of that commercial property to pay some of the SID money?
That's the discretion of the.
Depends on the lease. It depends on the, yeah. So it is possible that not even all the money gets assessed to the retailer. So a year and a half ago, I had a grand opening. The mayor came to my grand opening. I would describe it as well attended. Promoted it by myself. Part of where I could have benefited from SID was using Olivia and her staff as an extra promotional and social engagement, and I could have gotten my grand opening from well attended to perhaps very well attended. So the SID monies enables the retailers to coordinate with other retailers in town and even cross-reference promotions. So it opens up possibilities that I can't do on my own. For the $50 a month or whatever the assessment might be, my benefit is doubled, is tripled. I can't do what I can do for $50 a month without the help of the SID. The improvement of the downtown benefits everybody. So maybe the dry cleaner may not get exactly 100 more people per year, but they're going to get a benefit per year because the downtown is better. Less vacancies, more people, more cross-referencing of retail and a pediatrician perhaps. So the improvement of the general district benefits everybody. I'm pro SID. I'm happy to pay any money that I would be assessed.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Marilyn Nancy, 57 Old Colony Road, and I'm volunteer on the design committee as part of downtown Bernardsville. And I know that we've put in a lot of effort in the past year and a half. We were instrumental in getting more garbage receptacles downtown. We have some more ideas in the pipeline, but we do need the money. So I'm for the SID. However, I feel that part of the money that's being asked, 175,000, could be reduced because this housekeeping in front of businesses, the weeding. I feel like that's the business owners, the property owner's responsibility. Just like as a homeowner, I'm responsible for my sidewalk. And I feel like that should be enforced, whether through fines or something else, should not be part of the SID, and should not be part of the town taxpayers' money. So that's my only problem, is I think it's too much money and it could be reduced.
Thank you.
We do have an ordinance for that also.
But should be,
if it was followed,
should be enforced, should be
yeah,
enforced.
it should be enforced, and then you wouldn't have that option.
Anyone else? Nobody else? Let's see.
Would you like me to answer some of them?
If you, yeah, why don't we do that? Yeah, kind of address.
I can be pretty quick. I'll tell you, this is the least contentious SID hearing I've been to in 15 years in a very well behaved community. So thank you all. I think the first thing to start off is.
Under X, can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. That's some people on.
That's fine. So so first off, just to be clear, tonight, there is no request for any type of action by the council. Some people said don't approve, but that's not for tonight. We have a long way to go if you guys even want to consider this. All we're really asking for tonight is guidance in terms of the boundaries and a potential budget and a funding formula like we've talked about. If you tell us it's just downtown and it's just $50,000 and the borough's going to pay all of it, great. We'll come up with a plan for that. If it's $175,000, it's all 3 districts, and it's going to be 100% assessed on the businesses, great. We'll come up with a plan for that and everything in between. So tonight really is about you providing Olivia and myself the guidance of what may be the prescription you want to follow. A lot of great questions. Mr. Harold, Chris, he had said, consider assessing all commercial properties. That's certainly within your discretion. As I mentioned earlier, it really is about what services can be delivered to those properties. But that is up to you. He also mentioned that the costs eventually typically pass through the tenants. That's absolutely correct. You will provide the assessment to the property owner via the taxes. Your tax collector will put that on a normal property tax bill. But then again, it's also the tenant that generally benefits. And so usually the tenants are more than happy to pay that assessment because they're the ones receiving the benefit from the service. However, property owners often do rely on SIDs, right? We talked about vacancy. We talked about policy issues. Those things relate directly back to value of property, functionality of property. So it's not just one or the other. Ms. Castelli and Mr. Moffett mentioned from the music school. Olivia mentioned that maybe a not-for-profit. Is that correct? Does anyone know?
Because I believe they're, I don't know if they're still.
They're ready for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they are.
So just to reiterate, if they were a not-for-profit, they would be exempt. They wouldn't be paying. But they made a good point, talking about general improvements like planters. Well, so streetscaping is not valuable to them. That's fine. But perhaps having Olivia work with them on their social media outreach would be valuable. Maybe attending the seminars that you provide about financial planning or business advocacy would be valuable. Maybe attending a networking event, working with the local schools to cultivate students. Those are all things that can be provided by the SID. It's really a matter of you as a business owner going to the executive director and saying, I need help with this, please assist me. And that's why an executive director is in place. So that's just one item. Ms. Peachy, maybe took my HOA reference a bit too literally, but there's no retail harassment, to quote her, there's no enforcement, there's no regulation from a SID. It's not a land use board, it's not a regulatory authority. No one can give tickets or anything like that. There's no extra level of bureaucracy. It's one meeting a month that you can attend or not. There's no additional burden that is placed in terms of regulatory aspects because there's a SID. It doesn't prevent development or construction or anything like that. So I just want to be clear. Ms. Kernan mentioned the partnership with the town. I think that's really important. Anytime that the town can hear from business owners who, forget who mentioned it, but most business owners in the town, they're not voters, they don't come to these meetings. So if you do have a representative like a SID to talk about some of the policy issues or land use issues or zoning issues, that's very valuable. That's going to enhance your business community. Mr. Melillo brought up a specific instance of parking additions. Well, I'll tell you, in Milburn, we actually commissioned our parking study for the downtown, added 30 new parking spaces at no cost to the borough simply by being more efficient on how we did it. And then the town put us in charge of doing all of the new replacements for all parking, including the parking deck. So we became the project manager, and that cost was eaten by us, whereas the town then simply provided the infrastructure cost. So we heard the issues of parking, and then we did something with it because we had the ability to work with property owners, work with business owners, and understand customer concerns. So he's not wrong that it's a concern, but there is a mechanism through the city to address that concern. And I think that's about it, but I thought, someone mentioned, just to look at the numbers. Someone mentioned, I think it was Miss Castelli, that this could be, tens of thousands of dollars a year that come out of people's pockets. If you look at even the 175 number, which is the highest number we proposed, 26% of all properties would pay less than $750 a year. 66% would pay less than $1,500 a year. So there's only 11 properties out of 100 that would be paying $3,000 or up, including some that have assessments like the shopping centers. So for at least a quarter of the affected properties, they're paying less than $750 a year. So this is not tens of thousands of dollars. This is hundreds of dollars. And I'm not here to tell people how to spend their money, but just to be factual, we're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. You're good. Okay. Anyone else? All right, then I will close the public hearing. Thank you all for being here and for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate it, and it helps us in the decision making to hear from you. You're welcome to stay for some of our very exciting things.
So are we gonna discuss this in councilman concerned with,
Are we gonna take a straw poll or discussion, or do you see if you want to go forward with it at all?
No, I think it's not about.
I'd rather wait till everybody's here and get the next meeting. There's 3 of us here tonight, but whatever that 3 of us have died and find it. Thank you. Your 10.
Oh. So if the desire is to have a discussion about it, I think we can tonight. I guess, Mayor, if you want to have Chad and Christine here, that's fine. We've gone through several presentations on this. So if we're not going to do any more presentations, but it's just going to be a discussion. I don't know. Al, do you have any? I think I'd like to hear kind of the people that have gone through the presentation. You went through quite a bit tonight. So.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say, Jay, maybe is, if Mr. Grillo made the point at the end that Olivia and Main Street Bernardsville probably owe a direction, right, from council. They've been putting a lot of work into this and a lot of thought, and we should probably get a sense, I would think, sooner rather than later, as to whether this is something that the council wants to take up. I also respect the fact, Mayor, that there are 2 members of council missing. I'm open to it either way. I know I'm ready to give opinions on it. But I want to be conscientious that not everybody's here. At the same time, I also want to be respectful that a lot of people are putting a lot of work into this, and they need to know whether or not this is the direction council wants to govern.
Yeah, it's just that there are quite a few options on the table, and I don't know where, I'd like to have Leslie's input as the CFO in terms of what our contribution could be at some point. I don't know.
Well, there's 2 issues here. There's the SID, and then there's something else we want to do. So why don't we take care of that? Well, we can discuss something else. We can discuss if then we want to give as a borough, give something, or if we want to do a referendum, or if we want to do something else. But we should be deciding if we're going to go forward with the SID, if we're interested in doing that or not, so that Olivia knows there's some direction. Referendum, we could not do till next August.
So just so you know, that would be a year off to do a full town.
That's right. It would be a year from November, but we have to submit the question to the county.
By August, yeah, so it would be a whole year from this election.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Gina could then participate in the conversation. All she's refused from is the SID discussion.
Yeah. Jay, you want to talk?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been through several of the presentations. I really appreciated everybody's contributions tonight. In my opinion, I'm not in support of moving forward with the SID. I talked about that a little bit last council meeting. in terms of it creating just a layer of government and tax that I'm not comfortable with. I am willing to look at other options that might be out there to support downtown Bernardsville or Main Street Bernardsville. This was not, about, I believe Al or Gina was the one that brought forward last meeting, the point that we are not looking, or what problem we're trying to solve. I think there is a problem out there from potentially for a funding issue. I don't think this is the right answer to that solution. So I would not be in support of moving forward.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I know how hard people have been working on this, and there's a lot of people that I respect enormously that have worked on it and are in support of it. Fortunately, I can't support it either. To me, it's more government and higher taxes, and I've fought for lower government, smaller government, and lower taxes. And I think like Jay raised at the last meeting, I said, what are the problem we're trying to solve? To me, the problem we're trying to solve is to give Main Street Bernardsville sustainable funding. That this solution for SID, and everything I've read, and Mr. Grillo has been extremely generous with his time, providing answers to our questions. It's the SID solution is for economic revitalization. I think that this council's taken steps, probably has to take more based on some feedback from the community tonight to spur economic revitalization. And if the problem we're trying to solve is trying to find sustainable funding for Main Street Bernardsville, first of all, like I said last meeting, I would submit that they have a board, and it's their responsibility as a civic society to be concerned with the solvency of their board, and government shouldn't be interfering in all of that. However, government can be part of the solution, and I would love it if, just like I think probably has been suggested, if we get a plan that looks at different segments of the community to try to raise funds and develop the funds that they need. And I do think, like I said last time, the $12,000 that we give is fairly paltry for what we actually receive as a community. And I would be open to finding other mechanisms, including upping the contribution that the borough gives to Main Street Bernardsville. Obviously, we have to weigh that against other priorities and other segments of the community that come to us for funding. I really just believe that if we pass the SID, that this is yet another mechanism for potential fees to be assessed onto businesses in our community. And, we all live in New Jersey. There's not, we don't need new mechanisms for new taxes. There's plenty of those. And so, I really believe that it's not the right solution, even though I respect the amount of work that has gone into it. And I know that many others feel it is. I'm willing to work to find ways to find sustainable solutions for Main Street Bernardsville, but I can't support what I believe is more government and higher taxes.
I agree with Al and Jay, and I am a volunteer on downtown Main Street Bernardsville's design committee. I think that if businesses in town would like to use the services of Main Street Bernardsville, then yes, they should pay for them. But if businesses do not want to use those services, they should not be forced to do that by a tax or an assessment that is put on them by the borough. And I am not in favor of it.
All right, that's three. Yeah, I'm trying to join.
It's the majority because there's only 5 votes.
All right. That's right, because Gina can't vote.
Right.
So it is a majority.
Yeah, so it's majority. Even if Chad and Christine are in favor, it's 3-2.
All righty then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. We have a public hearing on minutes. Oh, I forgot the names. Yeah. Is she good next door?
Are you looking for the motion for the minutes, or are you waiting for Gina to come back?
Wait, sorry.
Okay.
You want to, did you cancel? Okay, so I need a motion for the minutes of August 10th and August 14th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th and August 14th, 2023.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-1977, amending ordinance 2022-1911, which appropriated $60,000 for library building public restroom renovations. Would anyone in the public like to be heard on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Jay, the library.
I move to pass ordinance 2023-1977 on final reading and adopt as published.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Anline?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayfield?
yes.
Mrs. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-1978, amending ordinance 2023-1972, which appropriated $100,000 from the sewer capital improvement fund for engineering costs for piston brake replacement. Anyone in the public want to be heard on this? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Diane, will move that one?
I move to pass ordinance 2023-1978 on final reading and adopt as published.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mrs. McCready?
Yes.
Mrs. Greenfield?
Yes.
Mr. Anline?
Yes.
And we're continuing the public hearing on this?
Yes, continue the public hearing until October.
10th. Oh, because this has to go to the planning board, so.
It's before the planning board, they have not gotten back to us.
They're gonna
Right.
meet on Thursday, so that's
why they
did.
Yeah. The
Recommendation.
last meeting was canceled, so apparently they canceled this one.
So we need a motion then to continue the
To
public
continue
hearing
it,
to
okay.
October 10th with no further notice of publication. Okay.
All right, so who would like to make that motion? I'll make a motion to, continue the public hearing on October. Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
We need a roll call.
No, that's.
No, we don't need
it.
Yeah.
I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-1980, adding a definition of smoking to include vaping to section 3-8 of the Borough Code, which prohibits smoking in borough buildings, parks, playgrounds, recreation areas, and vehicles. Would anyone like to be heard on this ordinance? And thank you, Jeff, for bringing that to our attention.
And we also added chewing tobacco.
And chewing tobacco, we added too. We're getting everything.
Yeah.
I will close the public hearing. Gina, you want to do that one?
I'm going to pass ordinance 2023-1980 on final reading and adopt this bill.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Anline?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Didn't this have to go back? Didn't we get there? Oh, no, that's right, because we made it went from conditional to.
But that's their recommendation, so we have to go back.
The recommendation is to make it a permitted accessory use.
Right,
The original draft made it a conditional use, which is where it was.
but we're doing what they told us to do. Yeah, we're doing what they wanted, so we have to go back and get this approved, what we,
Better safe than sorry.
okay.
I don't want to get tripped up on that.
I know, yeah, okay, so it'll go back. So I need a motion to continue the public hearing pending planning board recommendations, so we will continue it on October 10th.
I will make the motion to continue it to October 10th.
With no further notice.
With no further.
Correct. And they have not seen this ordinance, but they have not considered this particular ordinance.
Okay,
even
yeah,
though
that's true.
They were good with the concept.
We had to do a different order.
Right.
Do I have a second? A second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-1982, an ordinance concerning consumption of alcoholic beverages in public places and supplementing and amending chapter 3 of the Borough Code entitled Police Regulations.
And this is just the fact that ordinance. to
Right,
allow
for the
Main
housing
Street
stuff.
Burnsville to have the function, and we need to discuss it, if you want to make the ordinance, so.
Right, okay. Anyone want to be heard on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Go ahead, Jay, we'll go back.
I move to pass ordinance 2023-1982 on final reading and adopt it.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield.
Yeah.
Ms. Green.
We're not gonna go back and revise this one, right?
Yes, we're gonna go back and review the current ordinance.
All right, this one, we are going to go into executive first, yes? Yes? We're doing
Yeah.
executive now. Yeah. So I need and just for the public, the council needs to hear from our attorney on this particular ordinance. So before we introduce it, we would like to have some of our questions answered, and since it's a negotiation, we will do it in executive, and then we will come back out of executive. Don't know how long that'll take, but hopefully not long. So you're welcome to wait outside if you have something you want to, add later.
Yeah, before we go back, just for the record, we did receive an objection to the fact that the ordinance is not included in the agenda. And there are several points about that. One is the financial agreement was negotiated by our redevelopment council, but it has never been discussed by the council in the final form. Secondly, this is just introduction, and it will be scheduled for a public hearing, and there'll be notice of that public hearing. And third is state law allows us to introduce ordinances by title only.
And if we introduce it, it will then be public. We can
That's
post it.
correct. It may not get introduced then.
Right, we may
Because
not
as I said, the
read.
council has not seen the final, or discussed the final financial
Right.
agreement. As soon as they do, it will be made public.
And we need to go to executive now, come back out and then do the rest of
The agenda, yeah, and then go back, and then go back. Wait, long. Do you guys have something else you want to do? Just here for fun?
No, we just. We need to make sure that that's, that's what our.
Oh, yes. You have my word. That's good enough. Right?
And she's okay.
Yeah, we're gonna control that. So we don't have to hang around.
For those on Zoom, I'm going to mute the audio and stop the video, but then the Zoom will continue, and then when we come back, I will put the video back on and unmute. That's what I do. But Alan.
Are we gonna go in there? Or are we gonna stay in here?
No, it's meeting out.
Oh, all right, I'll be right back.
But he's not gonna be out there, he's gonna be on salt.
Oh.
I thought we were.
You want me to call you, Jay, or something? I don't know.
How do we do this?
We can do it either way. We've done it both ways.
Can we just keep out there?
Yes, it's out. It's out.
That means you have to pick everybody out.
Okay, so.
Take everybody else out.
All right, so in fact, for those on Zoom, I'm gonna move you through these meeting room and I'll let you go back.
Okay.
Because you're not really a.
We want-
We didn't even move. We didn't move to go to the.
Yeah, that's fine. But I'm gonna go to executive.
Everybody, yeah, I'm gonna say, I didn't realize what was happening there, I'm sorry, it was a little bit different. Everybody's in the, hang on a second, wait.
Yeah, I don't think I have.